Hey there guys, I'm Renee. I am the owner and artist behind Chicly Reclaimed Decor, and welcome back to another YouTube tutorial. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how I created this decorative wooden riser. Made from repurposed materials, this piece was inspired by a combination of shabby chic and French country farmhouse designs. I'll share the process behind how I created this distressed paint look and combined it with a faux painted wood grain to achieve a weathered, aged appearance, as well as many more painting tips thrown in along the way. So if that's something you're interested in learning, guys, stick around because that's what I'll be going over today. So like I said, this piece is actually made from repurposed spindles and part of a vanity. With the help of my husband, we are going to turn these into legs. We are going to simply measure here to find the middle, so that way we can drill through the board and into the legs to securely attach them. I recently refinished an old vanity into 2 nightstands, and I was able to salvage this tabletop to use on this project, which I was really excited about because April 22nd is Earth Day, and I really wanted to share with you guys what you can create with repurposed materials. Sometimes upcycled decor has kind of a negative connotation, and I really just wanted to showcase that you can create something chic and unique for your home. Also, if you're new to the channel, please do like, comment, and subscribe so you can be notified when I upload more YouTube tutorials. So I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Premium Plus 2-in-1 bonding and blocking primer to prime this piece to be painted. This is going to prevent any wood tannins on this vintage piece from bleeding through into my paint. I added 2 coats of the product, and once that is dry, we are ready to start designing. I'm going to be using these decorative floral iFlex wood products, as well as this IOD wood trim to accent this piece. To make it so that my clay releases easily, I'm going to be dusting my silicone mold with cornstarch. I like to use DOS air dry clay. You can find this on Amazon, but I'm simply just going to take it and roll it into this little long length of tubing, and I'm going to be just pushing this into the mold. Then using a spatula or a palette knife, I'm going to scrape off the excess that is on top. That way the back of the mold is nice and smooth and even. I'm going to be using this to accent the lip and to create a border on this piece. I'm going to be using Titebond Quick and Thick to do so. I'm going to add an even amount of this glue to the back of the mold. I know that I'm going to need to secure this mold in place at least for 20 minutes as per the instructions for my glue. So I'm just going to rip off some tape before I put my mold in place. That way I don't have to try and hold my mold in place and rip off tape all at the same time. But I'm simply just going about putting my mold where I want it and taping it in place. And then once that is done, I'm just going to take a wet paintbrush and wipe off any excess glue that may have seeped out the sides here. Now that the border trimming is all done, we are ready to start working with our iFlex wood products. Starting with the same process, I'm going to add an even amount of glue to the back of this iFlex wood product, and then I'm going to set it where I would like it. Then I'm going to take a blow dryer or a heat gun, and I'm going to heat this mold up. These iFlex wood products are heat bendable, meaning when you heat them up, they become flexible, making them easy to apply to a variety of surfaces. As you can see, after slowly heating them up, this mold is flexible and it is ready to contour to my piece. And from here, I'm just going about firmly pressing it down so it is flat and flush with the tabletop surface. And just like before, I'm going to take a wet paintbrush and wipe off any excess glue. I also wanted to add a more subtle type textured border to the top. And so to do that, I'm going to be using these decorative tacks, and I'm going to go about measuring every inch on this tabletop just to make sure that I know that they will be evenly dispersed. Now that I'm done with that step, I want to measure to make sure that when I add my tacks, they all line up in a neat little row. So that is what I'm doing here. I'm creating a straight line for reference. When my clay has had time to dry and we've added all of our other iFlex wood products and decorative tacks, we are ready to start adding our layers of texture. For my texture, I have a mix of Paint Couture's crust as well as their embossing medium mixed with their acrylic mineral paint Candlelight. And what I'm doing here is I am taking my artist's brush and I'm simply going about stippling this product where I want it on my piece. I'm going to be adding a lot of heavier texture around these edges here and then less texture towards the middle. What I'm doing with this product is I'm going to be using this to create a chippy distressed paint finish. We're going to be adding multiple colors of this product and then we're going to be doing our faux wood grain, and then at the very end we are going to be coming back and we are going to be chipping back all these added layers of colorful texture, and this is what is going to give us that chippy distressed look. Now that I have a heavier coat of texture down along the edges and these corners, I'm going to go about adding just a little bit of texture here in the middle. Remember here, I don't want to add a lot of heavy texture here in the middle because I'm going to be coming in and adding a hand-painted faux wood grain. And if I add too much texture, my graining tool is not going to be able to smoothly glide over the surface to create those faux wood grains. And here's a close-up shot once I was done adding the white texture base. And because those decorative tacks are metal, I want to make sure to use a primer on those as well, so that way the paint finish lasts. Next up, for the chippy brown parts, I have mixed this custom brown color with, again, Paint Couture's crust and some of their embossing medium. And I'm just going to simply follow the same steps as before to add this texture heavy around the corners and edges, and then just here and there in the middle. Once I had that layer down, I decided I wanted just a few more areas where there would be that chippy white. So I went about adding that white texture heavier in some areas along the edges, as you can see here. And again, here is another close-up look at the texture that we have down so far. I'm going to be using Italian ivory. We are going to be using this to start working on our faux wood grain. And I'm going to be using this long oval brush. This is a brush by Capital Crafts. This is part of the craft line by Paint Couture. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm just going to brush this over top of all the texture that we have down here. And at this point, I am not worried about full coverage because we are going to be coming back and distressing this piece. So it just is going to add to that effect. Next up, I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Driftwood. This is part of their chalk style line of paint, and just a wood graining tool. You can find this at any of your hardware stores or on Amazon. What I'm doing here is I am laying down a pretty thick layer of paint, and then I'm going to take my wood graining tool and holding it at about a 45-degree angle, I'm going to slide it through the paint, rocking it back and forth, moving from one side to the other. Remember, we're not going for perfection here. We're going for a weathered wood grain look. So if it catches on the crust texture, it's not going to matter. It's just going to add to the aesthetic of this look. Definitely be sure to wipe off your graining tool after a couple swipes or so. But then I just continued on with that process to add the grain to the rest of this top. Here's a close-up shot once we were done with that step. Once that had time to dry, I came back through with Angel Eyes. Again, this is part of Paint Couture's acrylic mineral line of paint, and I'm going to be using this paint as basically a wash. I do not want full coverage with this paint, so I have not overloaded my paintbrush. I'm only going to be putting one thin watered down layer of paint over top. That way you still have the gray color peeking through in some areas, as well as that faux wood grain. It really gives it this kind of weathered, aged look. You'll see especially when we go to start distressing. This is probably my favorite part of doing a design like this, is chipping back all that texture to reveal all the different colors. So I'm using a chisel. If you have a carob scraper, that would work perfectly. And like I said, I'm just going through and I am scraping off this texture. I'm also using discretion as well, because in some areas I leave the texture on so it's a little bit heavier. It just kind of adds a different look and another aged element to this fun shabby chic design. And here is a close-up of all that amazing chippy, distressed paint that we have created so far, as well as the grain and weathered wood look. Age and antique this design even more. We're going to be using Amber Honey. This is a glaze by Paint Couture Paint. If you have heard of people using like a wax per se to add age to something, this is basically the same thing, but I prefer to work with the glaze simply because I feel like I have more artistic control over how much or how little of this product I leave on. So after I've added my glaze to my molding and the edges, I'm simply taking a towel or a rag to wipe back the excess. And as you can see, it is left in all the little nooks and crannies of the trim, aging it, but also bringing out that intricate design. This is a really good example of why I prefer glaze. When I was taking my glaze off, I wasn't quite getting as much of the product off as I wanted. So what I did is I take my misting bottle filled with water and I just sprayed it, and I was then able to take off more of the product. That is definitely not something that you can do with wax. And I'm going to follow that same process to glaze these iFlex wood molds to bring out all these beautiful, intricate carved details. And here it is after we had glazed all the edges and these moldings. To add some French country elegant script to this, we are going to be using these rub-on transfers. These are just leftovers I have from a Redesign with Prima transfer that I had cut up previously for a project. If you don't have transfers left over like I have here, you could just find an elegant French script stencil to use instead. Before I start using any of these transfers, I'm going to map out my design first. Transfers are super easy to use, and they are an easy way to add an artistic element to a variety of home decor. What you're going to do is you're going to peel off the top layer, the transfer from the backing, and then gently place your transfer down where you want it. Then you're going to burnish this design onto your wood by using a tool such as this to rub the transfer, applying firm but even pressure all over this rub-on transfer design. Then starting from one side, you are going to peel off the top plastic, and your transfer at this point should remain on your design. And then I'm just going to follow that exact same process to add the rest of these transfers. Now that we have our transfers on, I want to add just one more little element of design. So I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Antique Gold. This is part of their Luxe Metallic line of paint. This is fantastic. It is so heavily pigmented. And I am going to be employing a dry brushing technique. Dry brushing is where you have very little paint on your brush, and then you gently brush over any raised areas. It should accent them and bring them to the forefront. All sealed with Paint Couture's flat top coat. This is the finished Shabby Chic French country farmhouse inspired design. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial where we went over how I created this wood grain, as well as the distressed chippy paint look, and how you can easily redesign any piece of home decor using iFlex wood products and other molds. I'm Renee. Thank you so much for watching, guys. You can follow me for more furniture flips as well as painting tips. And I hope I've inspired you to pick up a paintbrush and do a little creating of your very own.